across Manchester, there's a lot come out about their financials this week. The Man United are projecting a record full year revenue of 660 million. What has likely driven that rise in revenue?
Well, they were in the Champions League, which helps, and new commercial deals. So they came to the end of the deal that they had in place with TeamViewer, which is now going to be replaced going forward. And I think TeamViewer in that final year, I assume this is in the numbers, but TeamViewer paid effectively an exit fee in respect of that to get out of the deal early. They've also got a renewed kit deal. I think the number is something like 75 million to 90 million pounds from Adidas. So you're looking at, on my numbers, approximately half has come from commercial of the 660, which, clearly is a very sizable amount. 330 million puts them right up there in terms of global commercial players. Match day actually was probably quite a bit down on 2023. So they needed to make it up on the back of commercial and also broadcast, and particularly Champions League. The issue that they've got, United, is that next season you'll see a dip almost certainly in broadcast, because they made about 50 million pounds this year from Champions League, even though they didn't get out the group. But next year it's going to fall probably in half, and that, so a final in the Europa gets you about 30 million quid, whereas even a group stage exit in the Champions League is worth about double that next season. So they're going to fall back to probably at best something like, unless they win the league, at best something like 210 million quid of broadcast. So they'll have a challenge beating the 660 next season with that dip. But they will have the new Snapdragon commercial deal coming through, which will counteract some of that loss, and then it'll be about what they're generating on a match day. But anyway, that's the breakdown of where you get the 660. The bigger issue with United really in the season just gone is their cost base, because what they also reported on the back of the 660 is an EBITDA of 140 million pounds. And clearly doing a very simple math tells you that their expenses, their wage bill plus their other expenses, was quite an extraordinary amount at 520 million pounds. So their wage bill probably is somewhere in the order of about 340, with the other expenses around about 180. But 520 of expenses, is also a record for United. And, clearly it's a very big number, and that's before their exceptional costs. And they had in the year probably somewhere in the order of 50 million quid of exceptional costs, which includes the incredible 40 million pounds that they seem to have paid on behalf of the Glazers for the strategic review sale process, which ultimately only generated for the club itself what will be a total of $300 million when the final installment is paid by Ratcliffe towards the end of the year. So, on a company fundraise of about 250 million pounds, they paid about 40 million pounds of fees to Rain Group and other advisors. And really, most of that is on behalf of the Glazers. So you wonder why they've ended up paying that themselves. But what that means when you actually take it all the way through down to the PSR calculation. So from the EBITDA number, you take off the exceptionals, and then you take off player amortization, which is, let's say, another 180 million pounds. So they make a pretty hefty 100 million pound operating loss in the season, United. And they're notoriously poor sellers of players. So if you look at someone like Chelsea, for example, they'll probably be generating at the moment about 120 million pounds a year in player sales profits. And United probably did less than 40. And it means that on the face of it, they actually breached PSR for the season just gone, unless they were in some way allowed to add back some of those exceptionals that we just talked about. Now, you're not typically meant to do that, but I think that they must have done it, because there was no sign that United were scrambling around before 30th of June to sell players. So you would have to assume that they have passed PSR for 23-24. Quite how they've done it, we will see. It doesn't look that obvious on the numbers.
With that £40 million that they paid out during the sales process, have the shareholders got reason to ask why the figure was so high? I mean, there could be a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, why it's so high, I guess, is if you just, the starting point was probably we'll run a sale process where we'll try and sell the business for, let's say, $5 billion, the whole thing. In which case, those fees are reasonable. I don't know what they were probably charging, maybe 1% of total deal value. It's not quite the same where the deal ends up being effectively a private fundraise for the Glazers and a very small new share issue for the company itself. And in that scenario, it is surprising that the company would have to pay those fees itself, and the Glazers would effectively hitch a free ride on the back of the company paying those fees. As I say, it's in a scenario where so far the company has only raised $200 million. So what's that? Let's say 170 million quid. And yet, so it's raised 170 and paid out 40. I was a shareholder actually up until recently, small shareholder. I wouldn't be happy about that. Look, it's not untypical, but usually what the company would end up doing is where they ended up effectively subsidizing a principal shareholder's process. They would expect the principal shareholder to indemnify the company for at least some of those fees, because the process in the end did not deliver a sale of all of the company's shares. It delivered very specifically a sale for the Glazers.